Good evening, and welcome to the Morrison County Planning Commission public hearing for March 17, 2026. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for attending this evening. I have a few items to cover before we get started. Please sign in at the door if you have not already done so. There you will also find a detailed handout of step-by-step procedure we will follow tonight if you wish to take one. Please put any electric devices on silent mode at this time. Also, please note that all testimony is being recorded for the record. Members of the Planning Commission are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners with one member from each of the 5 commissioner districts. Land Services staff is here to assist the Planning Commission with its duties. The task of the Planning Commission is to hold the public hearing and make a recommendation to the County Board of Commissioners for approval or denial of requests for conditional and interim use permits, rezones, plats, and ordinance amendments in accordance with state law and county ordinance. The burden of approving a request meets the criteria for approval rests with the applicant. There is a protocol for how we will proceed tonight. For each request on the agenda, we will hear a staff report, hear testimony from the applicants, and then we will discuss and gather information as needed. Next, I will ask if there is anyone in the audience wishing to speak to the request. I will ask each party to come to the podium, state their name and address for the record, and give their testimony. Please be as factual as possible and direct all statements and questions to me. After all testimony is complete, I will close the public hearing portion of the process. The Planning Commission will then review and discuss the case in terms of our findings of fact criteria as required by Minnesota statute and county ordinance. We will have a series of votes, discuss whether conditions be made, then there will be a final motion to recommend approval or denial to the County Board of Commissioners. After this final vote on your request, you may leave if you wish. The County Board of Commissioners will then consider the request and our recommendation at the next regular meeting and will either grant or deny the request. So our first agenda item this evening is U.S. Poplar Lake Solar, LLC, Gerald and Marlis Kleiber Family Trust. If you want to come up forward up here and give us your name and address, or if you're representing them, please do the same.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Tina Munson, T-E-N-A-M-O-N-S-O-N, and I'm with U.S. Solar. And the address is 323 North Washington Avenue, Minneapolis.
I'll pull your microphone up.
Okay, so thank you very much, Tina, and welcome. With that, I think I'll turn it over to Amy. Give us for staff report.
Certainly. Before I do that, Mr. Chair, I just want to let everyone know, because there's a lot going on with renewable energy right now. This is a public hearing for an individual solar farm. This is not a public hearing for the renewable energy moratorium, and it is not a hearing regarding any wind energy. So I just want to make that clear to everybody so y'all know what we're talking about and discussing tonight. Okay, so with that, this is a conditional use permit request to establish a solar farm, and the ordinance section that applies is section 604.6 and 1228. Here's an aerial photograph of the property that we're looking at tonight, outlined in blue. And then here is a site drawing provided by the applicant. And here's another drawing provided by the applicant highlighting the area of the solar installation. The Kleibers own this undeveloped 155.45 acre parcel. It is approximately 1.3 miles east of the city of Little Falls and has frontage on Minnesota Highway 27. Approximately 60 acres are wooded, 80 acres are cropped, and the remaining is wetland and or idle. It is adjacent to the Popple Lake State Wildlife Management Area on the west, a Minnesota Power and Light substation and large-scale feedlot on the south, and a small farm and residences on the east. According to the USDA Web Soil Survey, the land is considered prime farmland and farmland of statewide importance. And then here is just a zoomed out aerial photo of the surrounding area. And then here is the USDA map for the soil types that are highlighted, outlined in the black box is the location of this parcel. And it's listed as prime farmland if drained, and all areas of the other soil type are prime. USS Popple Lake Solar LLC requests a conditional use permit to install a 10 megawatt ground-mounted solar farm. The installation would utilize the productive acreage and would occupy approximately 57 acres. The proposed setbacks are 97 feet from the right-of-way, 45 feet is required, 74 feet from the east, and 1,636 feet from the west side property lines, 25 feet is required, and 108 feet from the rear or the south property line, and 35 feet is required. So again, here is the site drawing with that drawn in with those setbacks. Electricity produced from this solar installation would be sold via an interconnection agreement with Minnesota Power. 2 of the 3 studies have been completed by Minnesota Power for the interconnection agreement. The panels are arranged in rows, and the racking system to hold the panels is installed on I-beams driven into the ground at a depth determined by structural and geotechnical analysis. The USDA Web Soil Survey rates this area as very limited for solar array ballast anchor and soil-based anchor systems. And then here is that area again outlined in the black box is the property or the parcel, and it's limited for depth to saturated zone, frost action, depth to saturated zone, and hill slope position. And then for the soil-based anchor systems, it's limited due to depth to saturated zone, frost action, steel corrosion, and hillside position, or hill slope position. The proposed panels will track east to west following the sun. According to the glare study, the maximum height of the installed panels at maximum tilt is 14 feet. The area containing the solar panels would be enclosed by a security fence, not to exceed 8 feet in height. The typical type of fence they use is a page wire farm field style fence with wooden posts. A pollinator-friendly seed mix is proposed beneath the panels. Access to the facility will occur via an expected easement through the Minnesota Power property to the south, as well as an entrance off State Highway 27. The application does not include formal approval from MnDOT for a new access, so it's assumed the existing entrance will be used. Internal 12-foot wide roads are planned to access the installation. Once construction and operational, quarterly site visits are expected for maintenance. The property is within the Little Falls Morrison County Airport's conical airspace jurisdiction. This project does not impact the maximum height restrictions for this airspace. Since the airport does not have an air traffic control tower and the solar installation is not on airport property, a glare study is not mandated by the Federal Aviation Administration. However, the applicant submitted a glare study to meet the ordinance performance standards. The glare study analyzed predicted glare from several vantage points, including 5 surrounding residences, traveling public on Highway 27, and pilots following a flight path to and from the Little Falls Morrison County Municipal Airport. The modeling assumed a worst-case scenario with full sun conditions and no vegetative screening. The installation was modeled for 3 glare types: red, which is the most intense and cause retinal burn; yellow, potential to cause after image; and green, that has a low potential to cause after image. According to the summary of glare results, of the 10 residences modeled for glare at 2 heights using 0 DRA, which is the degree rest angle, 8 observation points received predicted green glare and 1 yellow glare. Highway Minnesota 27, car and truck receptors receive green and yellow glare, and one airport flight path at Little Falls Airport received green glare. Maximum minutes of glare per year and per day are shown on Table 5 in the glare study, which was a part of your packet. These findings were found at the 0-degree rest angle. No glare was found at the 5-degree rest angle. The existing vegetation on the west, north, and east sides of the property is expected to provide glare screening. The applicant has also included plans for additional vegetative screening at the north end of the installation along Highway 27. If a 5-degree rest angle were utilized, this would further reduce the risk of glare. And then here is that excerpt from the glare study with the observation points. And it's essentially the summary of where glare was detected, or predicted, I should say. And then here's also from the glare study, just showing the movement of the panels and how they're organized. And then also this depicts the rotation of the panels throughout the day. The on-site wetland delineation found 1.07 acre wetland within the southwest portion of the project area, and it's adjacent to the state wildlife management area to the west. The applicant's consultant submitted the report and form for activities affecting water resources to the Morrison County Soil and Water Conservation District for concurrence in November of 2025. The Soil and Water Conservation District deemed the application incomplete because it was submitted outside the vegetation growing season and review was not possible, so resubmittal of this report must occur. The Department of Natural Resources evaluated the site and the surrounding area to determine whether it is a site of biodiversity significance. They found it to be below the minimum biodiversity threshold for statewide significance. However, the DNR noted Blanding's turtles have been documented in the vicinity of the proposed project and that the project has the potential to impact the species through direct fatalities and habitat disturbance and destruction. The DNR listed several actions that must be taken during construction, and the applicant has stated within their application that they plan to abide by those actions to avoid a project-specific avoidance plan. And then this was within the DNR letter and report. These are the items that must be observed in order to avoid a project-specific plan. This project will require a stormwater and pollution prevention plan. The applicant submitted a preliminary hydrology and erosion control plan that calls for establishing vegetation before construction to control stormwater. The applicant also has provided a narrative in their application regarding their approach to decommissioning. They identify that most components are recyclable and will be handled accordingly. The applicant has proposed a $750,000 financial surety for decommissioning. This amount is not broken down as to the rationale for arriving at that sum. Although the county can, by ordinance, require financial assurance for decommissioning, Morrison County does not have a set decommissioning cost rate. The submitted decommissioning surety amount was reviewed against the financial assurance requirements for decommissioning of other Minnesota counties. The offered surety is about 68% of the average required funding, which would be about $1.1 million per megawatt in other counties. I'm sorry, $75,000 per megawatt of the average requiring, so that would be 1.1. Consideration should be given to the amount, the interval for estimate updates, and the type of financial assurance the applicant should provide, cash, bond, letter of credit, escrow, to ensure adequate funding for proper decommissioning. There were a couple of comments from the public that were received before the hearing, and I will enter those into the record now, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Amy.
The first one is from Mindy Jennings. My name is Mindy Jennings, and I am a resident and taxpayer here in Morrison County. I am submitting my comments today to voice my strong opposition to the proposed 100 to 200 acre solar project along Highway 27 east of Little Falls. I have four primary concerns that I believe this board must address before any further industrialization of our farmland occurs. First, the visual and environmental impact. Highway 27 is a scenic corridor that defines the character of our county. For those of us who choose to live here, we did so for the open horizons and the heritage of our working farmland. Replacing that beauty with an industrial sea of glass and steel is a permanent scar on the landscape of our beautiful farmland. This project would take the agricultural land out of production for decades. The heavy machinery required for installation causes severe soil compaction that can permanently destroy the biological health of the dirt, making it nearly impossible to return to high-yield farming in the future. Second, the fiscal risk to taxpayers. Currently, Minnesota holds a D grade for its decommissioning requirements. If this project's owner goes bankrupt or the technology becomes obsolete in 20 years, who pays the multi-million-dollar bill to haul away the scrap metal and restore the soil? If the bond isn't ironclad and paid up front before the project is approved, that burden falls squarely on the taxpayers of this county. We cannot afford to gamble our fiscal future on the salvage value of old panels. Third, the tax burden shift. Solar projects in Minnesota are often exempt from traditional property taxes, paying a production tax instead. I am concerned that the revenue generated will not truly offset the loss of agricultural productivity or the potential drop in neighboring property values. As a taxpayer, I do not want to see my rates go up to cover the infrastructure needs of a project that primarily benefits out-of-state investors. Fourth, the heat island effect. Large-scale solar arrays can raise the local air temperature by several degrees. For neighboring farms and livestock, this microclimate shift can affect crop yields and animal comfort. Finally, I want to thank the board for recently directing staff to draft a moratorium on new renewable energy projects. I urge you to stand by this decision. Do not rush to approve this Highway 27 project while our ordinances are still being tightened. Please vote no and protect our land and our wallets. And then the second comment is from David and Irene Becker. A land plan was formed for Morrison County with the idea that areas of high-quality ag lands that are essentially rural in nature should be protected. Within the district, ag activities are given precedence over other land uses. The objectives for the land are to work to ensure through education, best management practices, and regulation that the long-term health of ag soils in the county are sustained into the future. Only 35% of the land in Morrison County is cultivated land. The rest cannot be cultivated, yet solar companies choose to use the most productive soil. The plan's objectives is to protect areas most suitable for a strong and stable ag industry. The Little Falls Township Comprehensive Plan, 1, promotes ag endeavors on the most productive land. 2, encourages and maintains ag activities. 3, promotes and protects high-quality ag lands. Once the land is covered with solar panels, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to put it back to its original position. As the population increases, the need for food increases, and the need for good, productive land increases. People from our township and county have spent many hours coordinating a plan that best serves our future. If we are not to follow the comprehensive land use plan, why do we have it? If we change it for one occasion, will it be changed for many? I have been approached by people that want to rent our land for solar use. It is difficult to forego the enticement of hundreds of thousands of dollars, but we must think of the future and follow the comprehensive plan formulated by wise minds thinking of the future. Please keep our beautiful land for agricultural use and find non-arable land for solar usage. Those are the public comments, Mr. Chair, and then those are your criteria questions.
Thank you, Amy. So does that cover everything, you think, maybe?
Chair and Commissioners, I think that was a very good overview. I do have a presentation tonight to talk a little bit more about a couple of items as well.
Okay, well, go ahead with that.
Do you want the PowerPoint?
Yes, the PowerPoint would be good. And Chair and Commissioners, since Amy has covered a number of the items, some of it is in the presentation, but I'll try to bypass those just to not be duplicative.
Thank you.
Now if I can get my computer to cooperate, there we go.
There you go.
Okay.
And I'll just let you know when to
Sounds
click down. Sounds good. So a little bit about US Solar this evening. I wanted to introduce ourselves. We are a privately owned developer, and we own and operate solar projects across the country. We are based out of Minneapolis, but we have a lot of our work here in the upper Midwest. It's about 100 employees. We have over 110 operational projects, many of which are already in Minnesota. So we have been doing this for a while and have a lot of experience doing it. We continue to seek to develop projects that provide local utilities with the needed generation that they're looking for, and I'll talk a little bit about Minnesota Power's demand. We do our best to integrate into the community the best way we can, then of course improve local environment and local tax base through our projects. So how did we land here, and a little bit why did we land here? So first and foremost, Minnesota Power is looking for projects, solar projects, of 10 megawatts or less. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about that. We are in this location because of the infrastructure, which is the substation directly to the south, which you saw in different presentations. So where we go in terms of projects is we find where that infrastructure is. We are required to be basically as close as we can to it. And I know some people think these kind of can go anywhere. We very much look for this infrastructure. So I think we do have sort of a more narrow footprint than many people anticipate in where we go and why. Because we have to go to the electrical infrastructure, we also tend to have to be a little bit closer to the load. So the electric users, the electricity users, typically towns, villages, cities. But we can't get too close because we have local development concerns, right? And there's also commercial or industrially zoned properties that have sewer, that have water, that maybe are in a place where there could be foot traffic. Those are the sorts of things that we don't need because we don't need any of that infrastructure. So our goal is always to try to do our best to land close to the load, not too close to the local development, not too far out, and of course next to the infrastructure, which I think if you sort of overlay that, it lands into a pretty narrow world in which we can work. Of course, we want dry, flat land. And then the last piece, of course, is a willing landowner. So we are not a utility. We do not have eminent domain. And so we work very closely with a landowner who is choosing to do something different with their land. A lot of times we see there's a lot of different narratives that come along with that. But key piece here, we can't just go anywhere. Even within that narrow sort of slot of where we can go, we do have to have somebody who's willing to work with us. So a little more specific about the power demand. So Minnesota Power has to meet state law, and under that state law, they have to acquire about, call it 60 megawatts in total of solar projects, about 10 megawatts and under. And this site is 10 megawatts, it's 55 acres, so that gives you a sense. So they have to do that, and they have to do that project. The projects have to be in the ground by 2030. So if you guys sort of take a look and know where the Minnesota Power Service Territory is, which is of course why we are here tonight, you can understand where these projects will go. And if it doesn't happen here in Morrison County, it will be somewhere else in Minnesota Power Service Territory. So those who have the Minnesota or MPL as their utility, this will be part of what your bills pay for, whether it's in Morrison County, Todd County, Crow Wing, near Duluth. That is all going to be kind of rolled up into one. So I think that's important to know that there is some benefit that these projects are going to go on the ground somewhere in Minnesota Power's territory, and those benefits can be either reaped by the county or by a different county. This,
Back up.
I just want to show that picture real quick. So we've worked with Minnesota Power in the past, and we're here because we responded to a request for proposal, and they've shortlisted us. So we're finalizing our negotiations with them at this time. This is our Itasca Solar and Storage Project. So this actually has a battery on it, which is not what we're doing this evening, but is sort of interesting, sort of cutting edge work that Minnesota Power is doing outside of Grand Rapids, Minnesota. And they use this storage to reduce the peak of the city. So in the winter, when it starts to peak in the morning, they turn on that battery to sort of bring that down. So it's kind of a interesting history. Minnesota Power is doing this sorts of work across their territory. Now you can change it, Amy. Thank you. So some of the visual characteristics, we already talked about the fence. I just want to highlight that that these panels are no more than 9 feet off the ground, that'd be the maximum tilt there. So they're quite low to the ground, which is why screening tends to work pretty well to help with visual concerns. Of course, the screening's outside the fence. There's about 18 feet between the rows of panels. Roads can be up to 15 feet. In this case, we have 12 feet. They're all at grade. Inverters, which I'll point out in the next slide. And then we do have to connect into the utility infrastructure, which requires poles. But in this case, the poles will be on the south side because we're going right into the substation. So you wouldn't have those poles on the road, which is kind of a nice reduction in visual impacts. So there's no lighting proposed. And I will talk a little bit about some of the natural grove of trees that are already existing there, and that we are proposing a line of trees on the north, but this is a very well hidden site in terms of concerns around visual impacts. I think one of the key things, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, is the pollinator-friendly native habitat that we plant underneath these. So we do this on all of our sites. Sometimes we have bees on our sites. In this case, in addition to the application that maybe you have seen, we're going to be talking a little bit about agrivoltaics. So the link between photovoltaics and agriculture. We're going to be talking a little bit about sheep grazing and potentially some vegetable growing. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But the fence, again, for the Blandings turtle, is risen a few inches, or I don't know, maybe 8 inches off the ground to allow them to pass through. That's very, very common, almost on all of our projects, that we have that characteristic. So this is the site plan. I think I just wanted to point it out. So for those who aren't particularly don't look at these site plans every day, right? The transformers and the inverters there, as you can highlight it, are in the middle of the site. And I think that's just important for you to understand that those are sort of hidden. Those are the ones that produce the noise or the sound, because they have fans and they're electrical equipment that run during the day. At night, of course, they don't make any noise because the sun is not out. And then you can see the access road. So you can see how we're going to kind of come in from the south and go up. We do have an access on the north to retain it for any sort of emergency services as needed. But otherwise, you can see we have a couple stormwater basins there for during construction. So this is the northwest corner. You can see the existing trees that are there. I just wanted to show that that's a pretty thick grove there, and you can also see the number of trees between the property as well as the actual home to the east as well as to the north. And then the next slide shows sort of a nicer, you can see that that grove of trees is quite thick and runs the length on the eastern side. And I just circled the homes in red there for you to be able to see that. And I'll just highlight in the glare study, they're assuming nothing is in between the 2 points, which I think is an important piece to understand the limitations of that sort of study. You guys have already taken a look at the structural setbacks via the staff report, but just some of the neighbor distance, the northwestern neighbor there across 27 is about 318 feet from from what our kind of best guess for their foundation to our panels. And then the western neighbor, the closest one, is 609 feet. And what we've proposed on the north side is a red cedar. We typically do that one because it grows really bushy and wide, which is sort of kind of the hedge, the visual screening mitigation that we're trying to work with, but they don't get too tall. This is the north side, so we don't have any shading concerns. So we are flexible in the types of trees, and I know this red cedar doesn't always grow this far north. It just depends. So we're flexible on that. I just wanted to put that in there so that you were aware if you had a concern about the type of trees. I think you've actually gone through most of this. I think the key thing here is that we drive in I-beams and we don't use concrete. And those are the most impactful part of the construction in terms of sound and noise for the neighbors. Fortunately, it's just a couple of days of install. It's not like weeks or the vast majority of the construction. Beyond that, it's fairly quiet work. You would have trucks coming in for deliveries, but otherwise, pretty standard stuff there. So stormwater management, we have to follow local and state laws. The pollinator-friendly habitat actually creates a pretty significant change in how stormwater, actually the runoff, the volumes, and the speed of any drainage that happens on site, because you can see this is one study, but I've had projects that have reduced the runoff, depending on the site, up to 50%. Because what this native habitat does is it basically grows these really deep roots, and then it allows for infiltration that wasn't there before when it was farmed. So we don't typically have really any stormwater issues because we're just such a significant reduction in water running off. So here's some of the sound. I've already walked a little bit through it, but you can see, we must follow state law on any of the sound. The transformer and the inverters land quite low. I believe that one is by the library, quiet urban nighttime, quiet suburban nighttime area in terms of decibels. So just to give you a sense of at 50 feet away from those from the transformers and the inverters, what that sound would be. If you're hearing it, that would pretty much mean you're in our site. So we don't really want that either. So that's a little bit about the sound. Not much here for operations. Once it's up and running, there's a couple trucks that come in and check. I mean, there's no noise, there's no traffic, there's no odor, there's no glare, there's no dust, there's no light, there's no vibration. We don't pollute your water, we don't pollute your air, we don't have any of those pieces that you would typically see from maybe some other types of uses, particularly in the agricultural world. Sometimes there's a lot of external impacts, and in this case, these guys they're pretty quiet. So I wanted to talk about the decommissioning. So the objective of decommissioning is to really do the best to restore the site to a condition that will facilitate its pre-construction use, which of course in this case is farming. So you dismantle, you repurpose the salvage value of the piles of the copper wiring. There is significant salvage value there. Functioning panels get packed, shipped off for reuse or resale. Anything else would have to go to, there's either a third-party manufacturer that'll take it, or sometimes you have to, whatever might be your local disposal options for those that don't work. We assume panels have a useful life of about 30 years. In our decommissioning, we'll remove everything. So that actually includes pulling out all of the piles all the way down. It's typical as a 12-foot embedment depth, depending, we go do geotech studies, just to be clear. I know you guys had a lot of maps and some things that the USDA sort of highlighted about. I'm not actually sure what an anchor system is or how they're defining that, but we go do geotech, we do corrosive studies. I mean, we do all those studies to understand what kind of impacts we're talking about and how deep we have to go. Of course, our biggest issue here in Minnesota is frost heave, so that's typically, and then the weight of snow. So we usually got the cold weather items that we have to pay attention to, but so we'll remove all of that. So we will pull those out all the way out. We'll take down, if there's things that are like below 5 feet, we get a little, you can create a lot of damage on the surface, which is of course not what we want. And I'll talk a little bit more about how what I'm proposing that we include in our application prior to building permit. So pretty much a condition, I suppose. And the last item I do want to point out is that the state of Minnesota has a critical minerals task force, and they just filed their report here at the end of 2025. And the state is looking at how do we as a state preserve the critical minerals that have come in via solar panels, semiconductor manufacturing, things like toys. The report is very wide-ranging, but they're basically starting to think about how do we take the critical minerals that we're using and how do we, as a state, extract them so that we can reuse them. And I believe that this will lead to a place where there is a very clear outcome for things like solar panels. I will also say that we see a lot of private industry. I mean, this is America, right? We're great at innovation and technology. And we are seeing businesses coming up to take panels that are not functioning for recycling and extraction of critical minerals. So the decommissioning, our lease requires us to decommission it with the landowner. We put 70, we do this a lot, and so we did the $75,000 a megawatt because that's what we've seen. I'm very open to having a further discussion. I was just in Todd County, that's, I think, $125,000 per megawatt. We are fine with that. We can work, I think we can find a place in which that security and the time frame in which you look back at the security to up it is something that we can absolutely work with. The biggest request on decommissioning is just making sure that there's various forms of that security. So the cash, the bond, the letter of credit, and I think that's very common. Just making sure that depending on your company, you have the right form of decommissioning security available to you. So what I've been thinking a lot about sort of agricultural impacts because we're seeing it a lot across the state. And the state of Minnesota, when you go through the state site permit process, which is if you have a project over 50 megawatts, you go to the state for that project. They require an agricultural impact mitigation plan. And this plan essentially also comes along with a vegetation management plan. But what it does is it lays the ground rules for how you treat the site so that at the end of the day you have, and then we can go to the next slide actually. You can see that it talks about, it's during the construction, you are preserving and controlling the topsoil in a way that actually protects it, right? So you have to use, you have to be careful about compaction. They limit wet soil work so that you don't have rutting issues. We're controlling for the mixing and for just other soil disturbance is the best you can. So it actually lays all of that out, how you're gonna do that and that you have to do that. They also look at very site-specific soils. So if you have highly erodible soils, we don't have that in this case, but there's certain specific soils that you might wanna consider on certain sites. It also requires for drain tile identification and a repair plan. So if you have that and something happens and upon decommissioning your tile isn't working, you have to make sure that it is working before you leave. And then of course the decommissioning of the site, so the restoration, the reclamation of the site. So I'm proposing that we as an applicant can produce this prior to building permit to make sure that everybody is, this is not part of your requirement as an ordinance. So this is sort of above and beyond because I think it's a good idea and I think that it does help protect that agricultural component, that farmland component in the long run. So the other piece that I think is really important for agricultural, sort of traditional agricultural use is this concept of agrivoltaic. So it's mixing traditional agricultural uses with photovoltaic. And we're actually, another update to our application, we've been working with our grazers who actually do have sheep. And so they are available to come to Morrison County. So we don't have to change what we're planting, but we would have the sheep come in to help with maintenance. So that's a traditional sort of farming or traditional agricultural use that we would offer and would like to have here. And one of our sites in Big Lake Township down in Sherburne County, we actually have a really innovative approach where we're growing vegetables on site. So there are a number of farmers that, usually kind of like farmers market type farmers, they do not always have access to land. And so what we've done there is we've paired up with an organization called Big River Farms. That organization brings they kind of match make. So they bring the farmers, they come to our site and they grow all sorts of vegetables. They're the tomatoes, it's lettuce, it's all sorts of things. You can make a whole meal out of it, and sometimes we have events there in which a chef literally only uses the food that was grown on site. It's very cool. We would like to do that here. We have started to make some local connections on this topic. This is very hard to do because you have to have the right organizations and the right people who need land. We are committing to try to do this here. And because of sort of these initial conversations we've had, it actually appears that this is an excellent site for that. I can give you a little bit more information if you need it, but we have started that, and part of that is sort of just happenstance of meeting somebody who sits, who sort of who is in this area that knows a lot of these organizations. And that person is Carol Anderson, who I'm sure you know from your Economic Development Commission. So we have chatted with her. She's got some ideas, very conceptual, preliminary. I'm hoping to dive in a little bit more actually with her tomorrow about how we can make this come to fruition. Some of the benefits, so there was a discussion around production tax, and so this is the number over a 25-year period, and then how it breaks down across the county and the township. And then there is an additional property tax revenue as it moves from agricultural to commercial, but that's fairly minor in terms of the dollar amounts. And then, of course, this is just economic development. I kind of call it an economic development pure play because we don't stress your schools. We don't stress your roads. We don't need your water. We don't need any real public services. So what we're doing is we're taking a parcel. The whole parcel is around $3,000 for taxes today. We're about half of it, let's call it, a little less than that. But so if you assume that this is I don't know, quick math, maybe $20,000 a year, that's around 10 times whatever you're making on it today. So, but at no cost from public services perspective. But this is, of course, this $20 million investment into your community. And then, of course, there are temporary construction jobs, but they do bring people to restaurants and shops. The hope is to start building in 27. It's a single construction season. So usually by the end of the year, we're done. A couple items. So I know tonight you have your criteria, right? So impact to social services, I've already walked through that. Our detrimental use, sort of your detrimental use to other people's properties. This project does virtually nothing it virtually just sits there. So aside from visuals, which I believe we are very well suited to hide this project very well, I feel like we very reasonably meet that. And then, of course, in terms of environmental impacts, we've worked through the DNR, which was where the blanding turtle came in. We do have a wetland delineation. I know that we have to go back. It's just a planting season issue, but the one delineation in question anyways in the very southwest corner towards the WMA there. We also know that we're going to reduce stormwater runoff, which will help protect that WMA even more so. I think that we are consistent with your code and zoning and the purpose of the agricultural zone. We have, this is really an agricultural use in many ways. I also think that what I have proposed today around the agricultural impact plan, as well as our agrivoltaics plan, are a great way to ensure that we're combining these traditional agricultural uses with it. And then I want to walk through how I believe that we are very much aligned with your comprehensive plan. So the first one, and I really summarized this top bullet point. So you guys in your staff report actually have the language from it, but I did my best to summarize it here. We are a long-term agricultural use. We are closer to the city limit, which I think is important for us to remember. I've already walked through how we're protecting the neighboring WMA and some of our other agricultural and agrivoltaics uses, which provide and protect the areas for an agricultural use, including traditional uses. Under this, you have a goal and objective, which is balancing a growing desire of people and businesses to locate in rural settings and to accommodate agricultural and rural land uses in the same land or on the same land. And then the concept of identifying areas for both agricultural, limited residential, and commercial uses and adopt policies and zoning to allow them to locate in this area. I think this is literally the perfect example of a balance, right? We have to be by the infrastructure. That substation, of course, is a destination for solar developers. Right now, our application is under your ordinance, which this is a conditionally allowed use. And I believe that you can allow solar in this county in a limited fashion, particularly when it comes to being near its infrastructure. And I think that this is exactly doing that. Understand the pros and cons of emerging agricultural practices, stay informed on electricity production. There's a lot of dots there because there's a lot of language in there. But again, no negative externalities. This is locally produced energy. We all know we need it, and it's nice to have it locally produced. Also, just sort of something to think about is our fuel is free. And so when you have geopolitical issues like we're seeing in the Middle East, where the Strait of Hormuz is being challenged, those fuel prices impact your electricity prices directly. The cost of natural gas sets the price of your bills. So I think we have a great opportunity to have a locally produced energy that has the free fuel that you will not, that you don't see on all of your energy generators. And I do understand, just to be clear, the use and the value of a gas electric generator. Okay, just to be very clear. We obviously have to, utilities are working to meet the state law in the best they can, and then we do bring tax revenue without stressing the public systems. Local economic development, so support efforts to build a strong and varied local economy that provides employment and access to the goods and services needed by county residents. Obviously, electricity, you guys all read the news, you know that we need electricity, and that includes Morrison County residents. This use is a diversification for the county. We are always open for educational opportunities. The number of tours we give to either schools or, not just like elementary schools or high schools, but also sort of technical schools, is we do that quite a bit. And any sort of local technician or electrician jobs that might come with this that's locally are always good paying jobs. Local, so your goal C2, local use regulations allow for a variety of business in rural settings in areas where they have access to adequate infrastructure and services and will not create unnecessary conflict with other land uses. I think we've already walked through a lot of this, right? It's allowed as a conditional use. We're right next to the infrastructure as adequately needed. And then we've talked a lot about sort of the agrivoltaics and the traditional agricultural combination there. And then I just limited this because there was like so many of them. But essentially all the same sort of the same standard things. This is local economic development. It has to go in a very limited area. I think by building in these agrivoltaics and this mitigation plan that we've really created a good local economic development opportunity here. And I think just the last, I think that's it. I'm happy to take any questions. And I appreciate your patience as we walk through this. I understand that this is I think the last time you permitted a big project was about over a decade ago. I know you did do one recently for, I believe, the Sisters, but thought I would walk through something a little bit more in depth as we put the application here in front of you this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Tina. I'll open it up to the board. John, go ahead.
Mr. Chair. The organization was founded in 2014, so you're just over 12 years old. So U.S. Solar and U.S. Clean Energy, parent company, sub-company, I'm assuming?
Chair, yes. Commissioner, USCE is the parent company, and U.S. Solar is, but that just happened maybe 18 months ago. So otherwise, U.S. Solar was the primary company. The owner is still is an American, privately owned, no foreign money.
Okay. So you mentioned these things have a shelf life of 30 years, or should have a shelf life of 30 years?
The concept is that the panel can last 30 years, yes.
So if you're 12 years old, how many of these things have you guys decommissioned at this point?
Chair, Commissioners, thank you for that question. You are getting to a very core point, which is this industry has not been, at least here in this area, has not met that 30-year time frame. That is correct. So no, we have not decommissioned, but there are projects, out in California, for example, that are undergoing decommissioning or repowering. So repowering is basically, and you guys probably know this from wind as well, but for the solar, you take the old panels off and put the higher power panels on today, or than it was in the old, and then you reuse or put the other ones. As I described in the decommissioning plan, usually secondary market for reuse.
Okay. What percentage of the organization's revenue comes from government grants, from that DOE money, Department of Energy.
Chair, Commissioners, we do not have any direct DOE grant money
Or contracts.
or contracts. We have
Okay.
none, but we do, okay, I'll just leave it at that. We do not have DOE money.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Brent.
Couple questions. So, in layman's terms, we're talking about a 10-megawatt facility here. Can you just explain to us and the audience exactly what that power production could serve in, say, the area, or how many homes would that power, or something like that? Just in layman's terms.
Chair, Commissioners, I don't have the exact number, but it's, I want to say around 3,000 homes on an annual basis.
Okay.
If I will double check that when I get a moment to do my math, and if I'm way off, I'll definitely let Amy know to share with you, but that's my initial assumption there.
Okay, another question I have, reference to the financial security. You talked about, you had kind of a proposal of 75,000 per megawatt. You're okay with going up to 125,000 per. How is that actually derived? I mean, is that the actual recovery fee of these things at the end of life cycle, that you know what that is, or how are you coming up with that figure?
Chair, Commissioners, what we do is, we've done a lot of these. So what we can do is actually give you a full decommissioning plan that talks about the salvage value, the cost of removal, how much we actually think it, so we can do that mathematical piece. Like, we can give you a full decommissioning plan that will also describe in great detail how it will be removed. We typically see Minnesota counties being between, around the 75,000. That's what we see, so that's what we proposed, just because we have seen that other places. And I think that's why you hear me being so open about it, because if you feel that that isn't sufficient, we can do more, and we can talk about that. I mean, there is a limitation to to the economics there for us, but that's why you see that number. And if you want what I would call sort of a more full decommissioning plan, I'm very happy to produce that and submit that to the county. And we probably could do that prior to the Board of County Commissioner meeting or at building permit, whichever is preference would be.
Okay, and in follow-up to that question leads into another. When a system has end of life and it's going to be decommissioned, who is the, since this really hasn't been done, who is the company that's going to do that decommissioning and that salvage, if you will, should that happen if it's not a repower?
That would be the applicant, so that would be us, right? So the owner of the facility would have to be the one that would actively go take it down. If that doesn't, then our lease with the landowner requires us to do it as well. So it all kind of points back to the applicant.
So your same installers would be the ones that would be coming back out, or would you hire or subcontract to someone else to decommission for you? That's my question.
Yeah, we would not hire installers to decommission. We would use people who actually decommissioning, like that's their job. They know how to take things apart rather than put them together. Just like your house, right? You hire somebody else to demo your house versus necessarily build it. It's the same concept.
But because some of this is so new and you really haven't reached that stage yet, probably that hasn't been done, so.
Yeah, I don't have company names for you, no.
Okay. And one thing that was just kind of glanced over, and I mentioned it, is the repower. So at the end of life, at 25 or 30 years, whatever this is, there's the option to repower then. And I didn't really see that in the packet anywhere. It wasn't really discussed anywhere. You mentioned it tonight. I'm curious what that might be, or your thoughts on that.
Sure, Chair, Commissioners, it is a conditional use permit in this case, so that runs with the land. So I didn't put very much in there about what happens if this use extends beyond, call it the 30 years of the life of the panel, right? So that's why I didn't do it, but a repower would it is what it sounds like. We have an electricity generator, we take down the panels, we put the more powerful ones up, and then that's kind of it. So it would more or less look the same. I mean, we have to be within the footprint of the permit, right? So we can't go outside the fence, we can't make it bigger unless we were to come back for an amendment. And so it would look, I mean, essentially it's the same from a land use permit.
Okay. Another question I have, reference to the airport and the glare study. Are you familiar with Brainerd Regional Airport and the solar panels that were placed there?
I am not, but I do understand and have heard, well, I'll let you tell me the story first before I
Well,
assume what you're gonna.
There isn't
what
a
you're gonna
story,
say.
it's a question, so,
Oh.
but I just wanted to know, one, if that was you or somebody you know that put those in place, and, reference to the glare study that you presented in the packet and reading through that, I appreciate that, because being a pilot myself and others that are concerned in the area, on final approach, the last thing you want for an airplane is to have some sort of glare interfere with something that's critical upon landing. And I know that some of these panels that you've proposed here are actually tracking with the sun, which have very little glare, and only certain portions of the day. But I'm concerned, with the county allowing solar panels to go in, if we were to recommend this to the county board, might be something the county board wants to look at is, do we allow this sort of construction within a certain distance of an airport?
Oh, sure.
And this is within roughly 3 miles of the airport as a plane would fly, so that's a concern. And that's why I wanted to know if you knew something about what was done at Brainerd and how that went, but it doesn't sound like that's the case, so.
Chair, Commissioners, I don't know anything about the Brainerd one, but I will say I did participate in a previous work experience on the one that's built at the Pierre, South Dakota airport, which is about 1 megawatt. But there are solar panels like on the Denver airport proper, right? So there are major airports that have solar on their property close by, and they have all had to go through the same review of what that looks like, all super important. But I guess my point is that it's clearly very doable because those are still standing, right? So if it went in and something didn't go right, you would obviously take that out because that is a safety concern. So that's really the point of my story, but no, I don't know anything about the Brainerd one.
Okay. I'm going to wait until there's public comment, and then I might have some more questions later.
Happy
Thanks.
to take those then, thank you.
Thanks, Brent.
Mr. Chair,
Marvin, go ahead.
I've got a few questions for Tina. First of all, I'm a retired employee from Minnesota Power, and I've been at this site numerous times before. But, so, first is, are you involved, or were you involved with the Camp Ripley one there? That's a 10 megawatt project, also the solar. Were you involved with that one or not?
I was not.
Okay, so, and if they're concerned about glare, that's at Camp Ripley, and that's right next to where they're landing planes and stuff, and, this has been in for some time there. For the public to know, the amount of generation, 10 megawatts, if you look at Blanchard Dam, that used to be a 12 megawatt, but it got upgraded a few years ago, that's an 18 megawatt facility. Little Falls Hydro is a 3.6 megawatt facility, so this is going to be 3 times the amount generating that Little Falls Hydro would if this would so go through. But if I read this correctly, it looks like you wanted to cover 57 acres is what I think that's correct.
Yeah, I think I just rounded to 55,
Okay.
but yeah, 57 sounds about right.
So some of our concerns are brought forward here, and you read that a lot of these panels aren't all recyclable, even though it looks like what we read the information, you were planning on bringing them off the site to be recycled. And hear, you know, green power, they're pushing for it, but then again, if you got non-recyclable material, what is the percentage of that is non-recyclable? Do you know?
Chair, Commissioners, in terms of the panel itself, what is not recyclable, or?
Yes, the panel.
I don't know the percentage. What I can tell you is the frame is aluminum. What they do is they have, you know, the glass, obviously. I would presume that they're, well, maybe they could recycle the glass, but they basically have to get the wafer from the inside, which is extraordinarily challenging. It's kind of a crushing, usually need an acid, like, to get it out. So the recycling is not like your aluminum can that you toss, you know, melt it down and remake it. So the recycling is more complicated, but that's what I can tell you is what they're trying to get at, of course, is those critical minerals like in that wafer there.
So, yeah, so that's still, you know, in the back of our minds, is this 75K going to be adequate to go ahead and take care of it? For instance, the I-beams, the copper and whatever, that's all recyclable.
Yes,
It's
yes.
very obvious like that. And it looks like your I-beams were planning on be driven in, so the removal of this, if this were to go back to farmland, how tough would that be?
You know, it sounds like, I just had a lot of conversation with our construction team on this, but it sounds like you can, you know, we put them in so that it has a certain pull, push, twist, right? We put them in and we test all that to make sure that we've got wind loading and snow load. You know, it's a pretty serious deal of how we do it. But it sounds like you can do it, and you can actually just kind of pull them up. Like if you have enough leverage, whatever equipment that would be, it sounds like that's doable. And we do have to do that in other, like pretty much the whole state of Illinois requires you to fully remove it. Like you can't cut it. They actually, so it's doable, and the industry is doing it.
Okay, because part of our comp plan here is to protect high-quality ag property, and this is deemed as high quality, you know. And, you know, I've been on it, I've seen some of the corn that was grown there, it's really good, and you hate to lose that. But I understand, you know, the government mandates that so much of our power is going to be of green power. And there's a moratorium against nuclear power. And even though they're trying to change that here, and so what are our other alternatives? These are mandates by the government, as you stated earlier. If it doesn't go here, it's going to go some other place. As you probably, the public, for you to know, is, for instance, there was a large project that got turned down many years ago in Morrison County. That person also owned property in Benton County, and now a large solar complex is be going up in Benton County, right next door. So back to the fencing. Now, the next item, it looks like they're not going to be more than 8 feet, and so what are they typically, just 4 or 5 foot fencing?
Actually, they're typically around 7 feet. Sometimes they might go to 8, depending on, you know, if we have that Blandings turtle kind of thing. But that's pretty much it. So they're just that kind of, I think we had some nice pictures in the PowerPoint presentation you saw. They're the wooden posts. We try to kind of keep an agricultural perspective. But we do have to fence it for National Electric Code.
Okay. So the other part is vegetation management. You talked about sheep coming in, and you talked about having some of these plants being planted, but that doesn't happen overnight, and you're going to have weeds. So how will you plan on controlling that?
Chair, Commissioners, I'm glad you brought that up. If you don't have, typically what we see is just a condition that you must control weeds at all time, which we're going to do anyway, but I think that just as a condition that you may want to consider. We have done over 100 projects. They're pretty much all pollinator mix. And so they take about 3 years to establish, but we come out, there is there might be some mowing, well, in this case, it would be sheep that would doing that management. And then there's spot treatment for when you do actually have weeds. The last thing we want to do is to have weeds and spread them to our neighboring farming properties. So we feel very serious about that, and I want to reassure you that that is something that we care deeply about.
So that may be a condition that needs to be put on by the commissioners. Okay. For now, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marv.
Mr. Chair?
Clint, go ahead.
Yep. Okay, so the questions that I have are driven probably from conversations for the last 2-3 years, just from people in public about solar.
Sure.
Some of the things I actually did some research on, and I found some things are myth and some things are fact. But first thing I want to start with, because it piggybacks a little bit of what Brent was talking about with the decommission. So what happens if your company goes bankrupt or you sell it?
So if we sell it, well, it's a conditional use. All of your requirements and conditions all have to carry on with whoever owns the LLC. So that has to, whoever owns the entity, that has to go with it. And that's not uncommon. If we were to go bankrupt, there's usually a series, there's a waterfall of who gets to take a stab at buying the project first or just outright gets the project. So that sort of waterfall happens. And then in sort of the worst case scenario, if nobody picks it up, you typically see an auction of projects. And so somebody else buys it. So there was you can look this up. There was a number of projects available and Amazon bought them all. So, in that proceeding. But what I think the key point here is that there's almost no end to the chain. And the second piece is if you have an interconnection agreement and you have the ability to put power onto the grid, you will have that value, which makes that no end to the bottom. There's no bottom of the value because we are so desperately in need for electrons.
And then just to piggyback off Brent, I don't need to answer anything, just my opinion. One thing when we think about this 75 to megawatt or whatever we're talking about, that's today. 30 years from now, a dollar wasn't worth what it was 30 years ago, so that's something to think about. That's maybe what commissioners can think about that. One of the things I had was, so this one here, it's gonna go from the solar panels to your transformers or whatever, and then it goes to the line. It isn't a battery. Okay, so that takes care of that part. So then what I have is one of the things that I researched was microclimate changes, and I found my information from Nuance Energy Group. Panels create shade, which can reduce evaporation, but over long periods of time, 7+ years, significantly reduce water holding capacity and alter soil pH and temperature. Okay, so that got driven where I found this is because everybody is saying that the solar panels take away organic matter. Okay, now what I found in my research is it does not take away organic matter from the extra heat and all that, but with the reduce the water. What I'm getting at is the vegetation's needed. If we don't have the proper vegetation, then we will have soil temperature problems, pH problems, and it'll affect our organic matter, okay? So we have to have the proper vegetation. So it's very important that that vegetation gets growed, and you're talking about grazing, and that's a great management tool. But then who oversees that to make sure that it's not overgrazed? Because it's very important that we keep the vegetation and keep our organic matter so that we don't have that problem. Because a big topic in around here is, phosphorus levels, nitrate levels, which this isn't going to produce any of that. But if we have no organic matter, all that stuff just goes right into the ground. So
Yeah.
who would oversee like the grazing aspect of it, or to see that the right amount of vegetation is actually taken care of 10 years from now?
Sure. Chair, Commissioners, the sheep come with a shepherd, right? So the shepherd also is an expert in sort of have we grazed enough without creating problems. We also have maintenance people that come out on, whatever quarterly basis, so they can always take a look at that. I think, I don't think that's going to be a problem, just given what I have seen on our sites in terms of the vegetation growth that we have. But if there's a condition just to ensure that that vegetation stays healthy, and I'm open to that kind of a condition.
Okay. Then the other thing that I come up with is chemical leaching. While rare, damaged or poorly sealed panels could theoretically release metals into the soil. What can you speak to that?
Yeah, Chair, Commissioner. So I've actually done pretty significant research on this, primarily because What happens in order to leach, that means the water has to get through all the way to the wafer. So to even test if it will leach, you have to get the water to the wafer. Once it gets to the wafer, then you have to see if it's going to leach. First of all, there's nothing in there that's really considered environmental risk. The panels we're proposing are polysilicon panels, which are different than some of the ones, for example, that you see at the Becker plant, which are for solar panels that have a very different chemical makeup that I'm not going to really touch here tonight. I don't think it's not really applicable. But so what you have to basically do is first get to that. And if you go to, you can do some research, I think, and I can actually maybe send the link to Amy, but there's, they actually, what they did is they actually took, the adhesive is so strong that what they did is they took this is going to show how little I know about giant equipment. I have a son, so I feel like I should know this, but those big like roller trucks, and they basically went over it 6 times to try to break it open just to get to the wafer. And then once you get to that wafer, you put water on it, and basically there's no leaching. We do have, our manufacturers do a test, so they're like, have to figure out how to see if it did, what would happen, and how would you take it out, but it's virtually impossible in sort of a natural environment to actually, A, break it open, B, somehow have some sort of acid to get the leaching to happen. So it's basically functionally impossible in a natural environment, but there's a lot more information I can provide there it's more kind of scientific and nuanced, but if you want it, I'm happy to provide it.
Okay, thank you. So then again, we read in here that the soil's kind of marginal for anchoring systems. You talked about pile and putting I-beams in, pounding them in. What was the depth on that again that you said that they would go in?
Standard is 12-foot embedment and then 6 foot outside of the.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just
Above
wanted
the
to be
ground,
clear on that. And then kind of my last things, I'm getting down here finally. So I don't know if you could answer this, it's probably Amy. I'm going to lead into another question for Amy, but I just seen in the packet you had like a 2,000-foot buffer around that solar thing, kind of basically to circle a thing 2,000 feet. On your guys' end, if you meet our setbacks, you really don't have any setbacks on your end that you don't want people encroaching on, or do you have anything of that? Can you speak on
Chair,
that?
Commissioners, I'm not sure I know. What's the 2,000, maybe Amy can help me, what's the 2,000-foot setback?
It didn't really setback. It's just a big circle. It just says 2,000 array group buffer. And that's what's in the packet. It's on one of the printed things.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, go ahead, Amy.
was that from the glare study?
It could be, possibly.
I think in the glare study, they identified kind of essentially it was their study area. And so they were essentially predicting the area that they would need to be looking at and how many observation points within that. I believe that's what
Okay,
you're
and that's
referring
possibly
to.
right. But I guess just my question is, for your guys' part, as long as our setbacks are met, you don't have any setbacks other than what ours is.
That's correct. We don't have any setbacks, and we typically, we don't have any problems with our neighbors. Actually, sometimes if we have a plant right up against a farm, we might actually catch the dust from it the opposite way than you would assume. But no, we don't have any required setbacks.
And then I'll end with Amy, just to make sure on this, like when we look at our feedlot rules and things like that, there isn't, with this, like this solar array, that wouldn't affect any setbacks for future feedlot operations or any of that, because it's not a dwelling, or can you speak on that?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Amy.
No, we do not have any setbacks in ordinance at the moment, at least. That would be a reciprocal setback from feedlot to solar installation or solar installation to feedlot.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I'll yield my time back to the Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Clint. So I guess it's my turn. I have a few questions. A lot of mine have been answered here, but so there's going to be an interconnection agreement with Minnesota Power, and when does that expect to be completed?
Chair, we should expect basically the final study with Minnesota Power anytime.
Anytime?
Yep, so we're supposed to get that last study, and then that would be, maybe call it 30 or 60 days for finalizing of the agreement and signing it. So really, we'll have all the information we need very shortly.
Okay. Next question, I looked over the lease agreement, and so what, it says in there that the leasee may transfer, sublease, or convey the lease without lesser consent. So if and when that occurs, what happens? Let's say you guys go out of business, or does somebody else pick that up, or what?
Yes, so again, sort of like the CUP, where any conditions or requirements by the conditional use permit that is required to go to the project, it also ties straight into land use agreement, or, the lease agreement that we would have. So everything carries forward because we put it in an entity that everything has to go in with that entity, and you have to abide by all of those. It's part of the rules.
Okay. Next thing, so, I know you guys did an environmental impact study or environmental study. So looking at, there's nothing addressed in there for wildlife travel patterns, you look up there on Highway 27, the first 2 or 3 miles of 27, there's a lot of car deer collisions up there. So I guess my concern would be, are you going to force deer to take that way onto Highway 27? Or I guess, because obviously a lot of deer travel back and forth through there. I guess, so is there anything, has it been looked at, I guess, at all?
Chair, typically, we consider deer to be, highly adaptable, right? Like they're everywhere. They're kind of, they figure everything out, right? They're eating your hostas right next to your window as well, right? So they, at least they eat mine. So, we don't typically look at sort of those patterns of what I would say kind of like deer. We did, of course, look at endangered species. Those are the sorts of things that we typically focus on because you kind of think about that animal as a singular, one of them makes a big difference. With deer, they're sort of a population type animal that we just don't focus that much on them. What we've seen is they more or less just go around it, and we're pretty far off the road, so I think there's enough room for them to kind of cross the road and then redirect. Sometimes we get them inside the fence, but not always.
Okay. And then I guess I'll touch a little bit on the decommissioning also, so I looked at, there was in our packet, there was a thing in there, I think there was 11 counties, and it had the amount of money that they're asking for decommissioning per megawatt. And the average on that was 117,000 of those 11 counties. And some of them, keep in mind, there was, I think, 3 or 4 of them that were below around $500,000 or less for decommissioning for a 10 megawatt system.
Okay.
I guess I looked at it, and the average is 117,000 per megawatt. But I guess the question would be, 30 years down the road, and I think one of the other board members touched on that, how much is going to be enough to decommission that in 20, 30 years? I guess that would be one of my biggest questions.
Yeah, Chair, and I think that's a good question, and I think staff sort of alluded to it, that there is a consideration not only for the upfront amount that would be required from an applicant, but when and how do you sort of check in over time? Either you grow that amount, or do you check in 10 years? Do you check in 15 years? I fully support, in your position to ensure that you feel that you have that money and you make those changes to ensure that you do have them. And I guess it sounds like staff already sort of is recommending you go that direction or take a look that way. My only concern is if we get into really exorbitant numbers, that may create problems from an economic perspective of our project. But until I see those numbers, I can't really tell you that's way too high or that's fine, but I do think that if you're sort of within reason and you do this sort of check or you have an increase, I don't think that'll be a problem for us.
Okay. And then one last question, you're going to put in a red cedar tree buffer along Highway 27.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, looking on the other end, there's residences to the other end. Yes, they're across the field, but, I guess my opinion would be they probably deserve to have some sort of tree buffer there as well on the south end.
I don't know, Amy, if you could go to is there any, I don't know if there's any like existing trees on the
Not
south
much.
side. Not much.
Not
I
much.
am very open to adding trees to the south side, no problem. Again, that one would be a height consideration that you can see some, I suppose. We would want some sort of height consideration because that's on the south side. So if you don't like the red cedar tree, which doesn't grow too tall, my request would be that we have something to ensure that it doesn't grow to, say, 30 feet, because that would be problematic for the sun.
Understand that. I guess, and one question on the red cedar tree along 27. I think they are very susceptible to salt, so you guys might want to think about that. I just throwing that out there.
Okay,
So,
that's good to
from the
know.
road, because usually when the salt spray ends up out there is when you get a northwest wind, and that would be detrimental to those trees, so.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a condition already proposed for ensuring that the trees stay alive, but that would be certainly one that would help if that issue does arise or any other issue. But I'm happy to go look to see if there's other trees that would be maybe less susceptible to the salt.
Okay, that's all I have. Anything else? Go ahead, Clint.
I have one more question. I have to ask this, or otherwise I'll get scalped. This gets brought up an awful lot. My dad's actually been bugging me about this ever since this one came up. Okay, you need 55, 57 acres is what you're proposing here. And you look for a flat piece of land or whatever, okay? So my question is, and you're close to the infrastructure, okay? Why take up an ag field when the same amount of acreage would be Walmart parking lot, the roof of Walmart, Fleet's roof, Fleet's parking lot, Aldi's, and then the fairgrounds?
Chair, Commissioners, yes, and it's very, very expensive. So what you pay for a very highly commercialized product that you can put here, you can bring it, you got the right height, is a very different price than a carport. A carport is very high, obviously, so you have this huge steel costs, you have wind loading engineering costs that come out of it. And sort of back to this commissioner's questions about grants, a lot of carports need some additional sort of grant or a buyer who is willing to pay that money for the innovation, let's call it innovation of that. And rooftop almost always feeds right into the building. So if you're not trying to sell your power to Walmart, that doesn't usually work.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? If not, I am going to open it up to the public, and I would request that, I guess, be specific on your comments. We've got 5 other items after this one tonight, and we don't want to stay here till tomorrow morning. So if you'd be brief and
Mr. Chair,
very specific. Yes,
you want to
go
do a
ahead.
time limit specifically?
I would say 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep it for you.
Keep track of it?
Yep.
Thank you.
Chair, okay if I stay here, or do you?
You can stay there, yep. So, public comment. I'm going to ask 3 times. Any public comment, come up to the podium, state your name, address for the record.
Hear me okay?
Yep, go ahead.
I started it.
Could it be Chuck? Remember, Chuck, 3 minutes.
I'm a bit loquacious, I'm not sure about that. Anyway, Chuck Perrins, Little Falls Township, 11878 Zebulon Shores Drive, Little Falls, Minnesota. I'm just going to make a comment as a township supervisor first, and Little Falls Township will basically be reserving any of our determinations and comments on this until the project, about the project, until the county's really lifted their moratorium, and then, we'll see how the land use ordinance plays out as well. But that's kind of where we're at for now as a township when it comes to our solar. Although I think it's always a misnomer to call them gardens and everything, but it's just me. I do have a question. What country are the panels
Address it to me.
manufactured in? Not sure if I...
Address it to me, Chuck.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair. You're absolutely right. Mr. Chair, Was it mentioned where the panels were being manufactured?
I do not believe so.
Okay, thank you. And then, this is a personal question or comment. If you know of one, I'd like to know a story of where anybody's personal utility bill ever came down because of solar gardening. Just because I've never found one ever yet, but, and then one last just comment is that, you know, interestingly enough, it was, the U of M is going to have a webinar on what you guys like to call agrivoltaics or cattle voltaics in this case. Again, sort of like a misnomer to me, but maybe people want to listen to that. That's on April 14th. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Switch that just for you.
All right. My name is Ron Miller. My address is 12796 160th Avenue. We own the property just on the south line, and we have 4 residents that, looking out their kitchen window, will be looking at this property. And so I definitely want to see some kind of screening on the south. You addressed screening to the north, to the east, and to the west, but you never said anything about to the south. And we're the residents that'll be most affected because the sun is out of the south, and we will get the most glare of any of the directions that I would think. So we definitely would like to see that. I'm definitely opposed to it. I think it's a highly productive field. It's one of the best fields the Clybers own. And it's sad to see that it'll be covered with these solar panels and you'll be losing all that yield and agriculture production. You know, we only have so much tillable ground, and we act in the United States here like there's plenty to feed the world with just keep covering it up, and we still got enough. Thank goodness agriculture through breeding and crop development have kept up to feed the world's population. But there'll become a day when, you know, I'm afraid that we're going to need ground to produce the food and fiber that is needed by for our existence. I like to also encourage the planning and zoning to have it so that grazing can take place underneath these panels. I've seen, like Chuck, there's a webinar coming up where they have livestock beef underneath these panels. And, you know, there's a lot of, I guess sheep could go underneath there, but in this county, I don't see very many sheep farmers. And I don't know the demand for it, but.
30 seconds, sir.
So, having said all that, I just definitely opposed to the taking highly productive ground and putting a bunch of metal on it. I think planning and zoning should consider it like a junkyard when they're permitting and looking at the comp plan for it. Thank you.
Public comment, second time. Go ahead, sir. State your name and address.
My name is Aaron Ethan, 6643 Hilton Road. I'd like to speak, number one, on the nameplate. In an area with a high GHI like Arizona, you'll get about 38% of the capacity of the nameplate. In an area with a low GHI like Minnesota, you'll get about 10% capacity of the nameplate. So this is about a 1 megawatt site in reality. The problem with this site is something called LCOE. It's levelized cost of electricity. It is a very specific measurement that tailors an area's power bills. So every generator that powers this area is going to have its own LCOE. Blanchard Dam's LCOE is $30 per megawatt hour. Sherco's LCOE is $34 per megawatt hour. According to Xcel Energy, new wind is $63 per megawatt hour. New solar in Minnesota, region specific, is 103 megawatts per hour. So, when a power company derives a local area's power bill, they use LCOE of the generators that provide power to that local area. They don't care what percentage comes from Blanchard, and that's a whole nother bridge to burn with offsets and carbon. They take the highest LCOE of the generator in that area. So right now, I implore the commissioners to look into every generator that feeds this area and find out what the actual LCOE of that generator is, because that is going to dictate everyone in this area's power bill. She alluded to, if you have Minnesota Power, you're stuck with this whether or not you like it. That is not true. If we vote it out here, it'll go somewhere else. It does not transmit power to this area. It will only raise the power in the area that it provides. So commissioners should look into the providers of this area, because this is a cost of living increase for Morrison County residents. And there's a reason we have HOAs, there's a reason we have commissioners, there's a reason we have a system of adjudication. Nobody wants to be the neighbor that says, don't do this with your land. But we can't have one entity negatively affecting all the other entities around it.
30 seconds, sir.
Thank you. So yeah, I guess Morrison County is already 50% renewable. Minnesota Power brags that they're 50% renewable. We're actually meeting the state's mandate. So it is a little bit odd that Minnesota Power is pushing this, but if they get these small arrays with high LCOEs sporadically all around the areas, they get to then raise that area's consumers' power rates. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Third and final time, public comment.
Hi, I'm Lynn Griffin, 14762 68th Street. Obviously, things change when you listen to the presentation. I'm going to make a couple simple comments. I don't think this project is needed, and it sure is not free, what you were told. It's not needed because there's no demonstration that there is a need for electricity in Morrison or adjacent counties. She talked about 3,000 homes. Well, they're getting electricity now. So what's she gonna do? Cut back on the provider who's already giving them? Like cycle down a turbine at Blanchard Dam, maybe? That doesn't sound like a good idea to me. The second thing I want to point out is the not free part. Studies have been done that show the difference between the cost megawatt per hour with all the subsidies and without the subsidies. And with the subsidies, the studies are often $20 an hour, with $100 an hour. In other words, generally speaking, these mandated projects are 80% subsidized. Subsidized means that we taxpayers are paying for that. Wouldn't that be nice in our own businesses to have 80% subsidies? Right now, the federal government has $667 billion on a 10-year subsidy plan for these mandated projects of green energy. It's not inexpensive. In New England, where they have extensive studies on this, I heard one of the other presenters talked about what it costs on an electric bill, and just on the mandated policy, on the mandated costs, New York paid 58% more on their electric bills because of the mandates. Connecticut paid 105% more on their electric bills because of the mandates. So it's US taxpayers who are paying for the subsidies. It's Minnesota taxpayers, we'll get hit somewhere. And as electricity users, we're gonna pay more money too. This is not a win-win situation. One final quick thought, and that's on this issue of decommissioning. I heard the simplest comments made that, oh, we can just decommission, and if we sell out to somebody else, they'll just have the obligations. Do you know how often these things are sold? About every 5 years, because that's when some of the subsidies start to run out. You should go down to Florida and see the mess. People that thought they were getting all these subsidies, every 5 years they got to find out who owes them. Sometimes you can't find them. It's a mess. You've got to have guaranteed, long-term guarantees that no landowner gets cheated. And believe me, it's happening all the time, particularly in solar. The state of Florida is a mess because of it. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Anybody else? Take a motion, close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by, second by Brent.
Second by Brent.
All in favor? Signify by
Aye.
saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. So, board, any questions before we go to the criteria?
The only thing I got is I'd like to somehow do a condition. When I look at our question for is the use in the planning commissioners reasonably related to existing land use, the groundwater, surface water, air quality? I think for me to answer yes on that one with groundwater and the surface water, I think the vegetation's very important. So somehow, I think that should be somehow conditioned that, I don't know.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Amy.
So Clint, are you suggesting that they keep a condition in mind regarding establishment and maintenance of
Yes.
proper vegetation on the site while answering the criteria questions? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Amy, go ahead.
Are you suggesting a particular type of vegetation? Or are you leaving that to land services to figure out what that is? Or where would you?
Well, that's why somebody has to be in charge of it, or somebody has to know what the proper is. It's like when I asked the questions before about the temperature and pH change, the organic matter that gets removed because of the solar panels unless there is adequate vegetation. I think there should be a condition to make sure that it's there, but I don't know under whose authority that, is it something that we'd be something where we could say that has to be approved by NRCS? I'm not sure.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking. I know we're not skilled or capable of doing that, but it has to be somewhere that somebody, I would say NRCS.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
What I'm gonna write down is that establish and maintain adequate vegetation. I will craft, if this is recommended for approval, I will craft something.
Okay.
Okay.
And you'd be fine with that, right?
Chair, Commissioners,
Yes,
yes,
go ahead.
just within the confines that we need to feed sheep that will eat,
Yep.
so, yes.
And also, Amy, I'd like a condition of a tree buffer on the south. Something that's not too tall, but does shield the neighbors to the south.
All right.
And then a SWIP, stormwater prevention plan. Now, that's part of their plan, but do we have to condition that?
Mr. Chair, that's required.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about that?
Because of the amount of disturbance, it will require a SWIP, and that will be required at time of permitting.
Okay.
Mr.
Go ahead,
Chair,
Marv.
I know it was talked about, and Tina said they're willing to work with this here, with that 75K for, and I don't know how to put a number on that, but that, if that needs to be some type of condition, or what we're gonna do for possibly to clean up, because if we were to approve this, obviously we want to make sure the funds are available there to clean this up and what number to put on it. And as I think majority of us agree that 75K is a little bit on the light side compared to other counties.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Do you want to get into determining what that amount should be? Or are you just wanting it on the record that you, the county board should spend some time with that?
I think that would be best with the board to go ahead and determine that with more research.
Okay, understood.
And I kind of do have a little bit of a number in mind. You know, I was looking at that 117,000 per megawatt, you know, 1.2 million, but maybe it needs to be north of that because of inflation considerations going into the future.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Generally, when we're going to do that, we will have touch points at certain, like at the 10-year mark, the 20-year mark, where we reevaluate that and we take that into consideration. So generally, if there's an amount set, then there would be a built-in review where we would adjust for that. And then there would be an adjustment at various points during that. So I think that would be getting at what you're.
Yes,
what
yes,
you're
absolutely.
looking for.
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, yep, go ahead, Brent.
With what Amy had just spoke to, maybe that's something on a 5-year schedule rather than a 10-year or 15-year or 20-year, every 5 years reevaluate so that it can be adequately addressed.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Amy.
are you recommending that as a condition, or are you just putting it on the record that you are recommending that the board consider a 5-year?
Just a recommendation for the board, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brent. Anybody else? Any other conditions? Pretty quiet, so I guess we're probably ready for the criteria questions. So we'll start with the first question. The first question is, the use will not put an excessive burden on roadways, utilities, public facilities such as parks and schools. I'll give that one to Brent.
I don't know if it's going to put an excessive burden on utilities because it's to help support the utilities. I don't think that this is going to necessarily affect parks and schools and or other public facilities. So I would say yes to number one.
Anybody else? Question 2. The request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property uses predominant in the area. And I guess I'm probably going to use most of their response to that. The request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. The project area is rural in nature. There's trees on the east and west. They've proposed, or they're going to put trees on the north side, and with the condition of southern screening, there won't be any visual impact to neighbors and motorists. They won't even know it's there. So the proposed project will not emit any noticeable odor, dust, lights, or sounds. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add to it, it's right next to the substation, so there'll be minimum additional power poles, wiring, and as you stated, it's a very rural, hidden area there.
Thanks, Marv. Anybody else? Question 3. The use, in the opinion of the Planning Commission, is reasonably related to the existing land use and environment, groundwater, surface water, air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by the proposed use. Marv.
Well, one thing bad about this here, it's high-quality ag land, as it was stated by a neighboring farmer, and I've been on it and seen some of the crops that are raised. So that part, it's, doesn't align with our comp plan. But the ability that these beams are driven in and they are removable and the panels can be pulled out and recycled. And according to the information I read and what we were told here, 30 years from now, if they discuss or decide that, hey, we want to turn this back to ag land, they should be able to do it without a whole tremendous amount of work. So that, and then they have worked with the DNR, and there is only, what was it, 0.7 acres, 0.07 acres of wetland delineation that may have a possibility here. So very minimum there, so it aligns in that respect.
Thanks, Marv. And I will add one comment to that. You know, the project, it won't have any known negative impacts to the environment, but being a lot of this stuff is fairly new, we don't know what the long-term impacts may be. So I will add that to it. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just a couple of comments here. So when it, if we would have had something come up, you'd have had somebody from the county or Soil and Water that would have stepped forward and brought something up at this juncture. And when it comes to the land specifically, it's not our land, it's the Clippers' land, and this is what they want to do with it. If they don't want to do ag, they can do this. If you want to do 1,000 head of cattle, and that's what they were doing here, it wouldn't be site pollution, it'd be smell pollution, right? It'd be something else at this point, so just for the record.
Thank you, John. Anything else? Question number 4, the use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. John.
It's zoned ag, we're here for a conditional use permit, and it's allowed.
Thanks, John. I guess I would add to that, just a comment, you know, more of what John says, it is compliant in section 1228 for solar farms, solar arrays, the use. So if you look at what it states in the ordinance, Ordinance 604 or 604.1 reads, the purpose of the district is to promote and protect areas which have high-quality agricultural lands are and essentially rural in nature. Within this district, agricultural activity shall be given preference over other land uses. And that's my comment on it.
I'll just, Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead,
I'll
Clint.
just go along, piggyback what you said. Here's one that, yes, it's allowed. When we look through our comp plan, actually our whole goal for the agriculture zoning, there's a ton of uses that we could put out there. I think first and foremost is to use the land for crop production and animal husbandry, meat production, pasture land, similar to uses. This is a secondary thing. So when I look at that, the problem with this one is if you draw a 3-mile circle around this or even a 5-mile circle around this, that's like some of the nicest farm ground in that circle. So I think that takes precedence over anything else that'd be done with it. But it is allowed. So it's just, we just wanted that out there.
Thanks, Clint. Anybody else? Question 5, the use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or the water plan of the county. Clint.
Okay, so when we look at the water plan portion of it, with talking about what I brought up earlier, there isn't going to be like runoff or any of that stuff. I was kind of concerned about the organic matter, if that gets lost. I think with the vegetation, with our condition that we keep vegetation in there, that's going to help with the water plan. I think we could say yes to that portion of it. When we look at the comprehensive plan, they've done a great job spelling out and interpreting the ordinance. If you look at what their answer was, you could probably agree with that. I look at it a little bit differently. I look back at goal 1 and then objective 6, when ensure the county provides and protects most areas suitable for a strong and stable agriculture industry, including but not limited to crop production, animal husbandry, meat and dairy production, pasture land, and similar uses. Identify areas of the county that are most suitable for long-term agriculture uses and adopt policies and zoning amendments that will best work to protect those areas from encroachment by conflicting uses. So again, I say something like this is secondary. I think the main thing is when we look at the prime ag land, we'll never get that back. That's nothing you can just build and do every day. So part of it, the water plan, I'd say yes. The comprehensive plan, I'd say no.
Thanks, Clint. Anybody else? Okay, so go to the vote. The use will not put an excessive burden on roadways, utilities, public facilities such as parks or schools. Brent?
Yes.
Myself, George, is yes. Marv?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Clint? Oh, I'm sorry. Clint?
Yes.
Question 2, the request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development, improvement of surrounding vacant properties for uses predominant in the area. I, George, is yes. Marv?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Clint?
With them conditions, I could say yes.
Brent?
With the conditions, yes.
Question 3, the use in the opinion of the Planning Commission is reasonably related to the existing land use and the environment, groundwater, surface water, air quality, and the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by the proposed use. Marv?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Clint?
With them conditions, I could say yes.
Brent?
I'm going to say no.
With the conditions, yes. For myself. Question 4, the use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. John?
Yes.
Clint?
No.
Brent?
No.
I, George, is no. Marv?
No.
Question 5, the use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or water plan of the county. Clint?
Have to say no.
Brent?
No.
I, George, is no. Marv?
Oh, boy, this one's close. I'm gonna say yes.
John?
No.
So, looks like we have 2 questions in the no and 3 in the yes. So I would entertain a motion to move this forward to the commissioners.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Motion by Clint,
I will second it.
second, yes.
You said you'd entertain a motion to move it forward to the commissioners. I need someone to make a motion to either recommend approval or denial.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to recommend approval. County Board of Commissioners.
So we have a motion for approval,
I will second that.
second by Marv. Do the vote. John?
Aye.
Marv?
Aye.
Clint?
Nay.
Brent?
No.
Hi, George, is no. So it was denied.
It didn't pass.
Didn't pass. And gets, but it will go before the commissioners, correct, Amy? Yeah. So this will go to the commissioners at the April 7th, 26th meeting.
Nope, April 7th.
Yeah, April 7th.
Thank you very much for
You're
your
good.
time this evening.
No, thank you for all your work.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. Okay, our next item agenda for this evening is, help me out, Amy. Which one is it? The Darren?
Irie.
Irie Isla LLC. Is there anybody here to speak to that? State your name and address, please.
Good evening. Greg Schubert. Address is 17025 Commercial Park Road, Brainerd, Minnesota, 56401.
Thank you. Amy, when you're ready, staff report.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is a request for a conditional use permit for alternative floodproofing method. The ordinance sections that apply to this request is section 1004.34 and 1006.22. Here's an aerial photograph of the property outlined in blue. And then here is a shot of the property from the lake. It's the one on the left. The property is in section 17 of Scandy Valley Township, and it's on Shamana Lake, which is a general development lake. The property is a non-conforming single lot, which means it's less than 30,000 square feet and 120 feet wide. The property is 50 feet wide and approximately 2,600 square feet. This property has a non-conforming dwelling built in 1970. The dwelling is approximately 20 feet from the lake and is within the mapped floodplain. The applicant purchased the property in August of 2025 and plans to remove the existing dwelling and use their replacement right to construct a new dwelling. Lake Shamana has been added to the county's mapped floodplain, so the floodplain elevation requirements for the lowest floor apply to this new build. Typically, elevation above floodplain is achieved by elevating the construction on fill. Minnesota floodplain standards require fill to extend 15 feet in all directions from the building. Due to the proximity of the dwelling to the lake, elevating on fill is not practical. Other methods of floodproofing are allowed by FEMA standards. However, they require a conditional use permit to implement. The applicant proposes installing a backfilled stem wall to elevate the lowest floor above the regulatory floodplain elevation. And the applicant has submitted a sketch from a licensed engineer with a statement that the design meets FEMA Technical Bulletin 1, and that is solid perimeter foundation walls design standards. Here are some drawings provided by the applicant showing the existing elevations and existing structure, and then the proposed. And then here is a sketch of the stem wall. And then here's from the Technical Bulletin 1 from FEMA. And then here are criteria questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy. That all looked correct and to the point. Looks good. Okay, thank you.
Well, good.
So I'm going to open it up to the board here, and they can ask questions, I guess.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Clint.
Amy, this is for you. So this one here is gonna be just a solid stub wall. There's no pass-through area for water. We've seen that in the past. Is it not required?
No, so when you look at, there is, so within the bulletin, there is one that allows for just the backfilling of the wall. And that is the technique that he is proposing here. So it does not need any pass-through vents.
And then that's basically just to help, because you can't just do grade. So that's what's gonna hold that. And
That's correct. So that's what's going to equalize the hydrostatic pressure. And so either you have the pass-through where that water can move through, or you backfill it like that.
okay. Then it's engineered wall. It's gotta be all right specs, all that stuff.
Correct.
Yes.
So the FEMA Technical Bulletin 1 is what it needs to be designed to, and that engineer will need to certify that.
Okay. Yeah, don't give you a lot of room in here to like move it back or anything like that. He's rebuilding, it has to be right there, so,
Exact same structure.
yep, so that's the only questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Clint. Anybody else? No questions? I'll open to public comment. I'm going to ask 3 times again. Anybody here to speak in public comment? Anybody here to speak in public comment? Anybody here to speak to public comment?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion, we close this portion of the meeting to the public.
Motion by Clint, second by John. All in favor signify. John?
Aye.
Marv?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Aye, George is yes. So public hearing is closed. Any other questions from the board? Guys are pretty quiet.
The only thing, Amy, there is no need to really condition that wall. That's gotta be just a standard to pass FEMA anyways, that that's done through an architect or, engineer, I should say. So we don't need to really condition that, right?
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, that's part of administering the federal floodplain and state floodplain law, that when he comes in to permit it, we'll be looking for those engineered designs, and then, after it's built, then there needs to be a certification.
Okay, then I have no conditions.
Thanks. Anybody else? Then we'll move to the criteria questions. The use will not put an excessive burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as parks and schools. Marv?
No, well, it's basically existing structure that's just coming up in the air there, and so there will be basically no changes to it. So there's no roadways, utilities, or public facilities, or schools that would be involved in it.
Thanks, Marv. Any other comments? The request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. John?
Just the applicant's answer here, the structure is existing in the same building, will be put in its place. Also, we heard from no neighbors at this moment in time, so shouldn't be anything affecting anybody.
Thanks, John. Anybody else? Question 3, the use in the opinion of the Planning Commission is reasonably related to the existing land use, environment, groundwater, surface water, air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by the proposed use. Clint?
I'd have to say yes. Not too long ago, we allowed this. We had a couple year portion where they could do that. Just run out on time. This is a project that's happening now that they're gonna rebuild. So yes, it's reasonable. When we look at the groundwater, surface water, and air quality, none of that's gonna get affected. The surface water and the groundwater is protected by this engineered wall and design the way they're doing it. So then there shouldn't be no erosion happening and things like that. So I would say yes to question 3.
Thank you, Clint. Anybody else? Question 4, the use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purpose of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. Brent?
This is shoreland, and it's an already existing structure. He's going to rebuild, he's just raising it up to meet the standards of today, and I don't see where it's inconsistent with anything in the county ordinance or the zoning district.
Thanks, Brent. I will add just one thing. The proposed floodproofing is contained inside the structure, and the new structure will not differ from the old structure, other than the floodproofing. Question 5, the use is not in conflict with the comp plan, water plan of the county. I'll take that one. Yes, the use is not in conflict with the comp water plan of Morrison County, replacing existing structure 1-for-1 with floodproofing per FEMA standards. Also, that should negate any conflict or with the comp plan and water plan of the county.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I'd
Clint.
just like to add that this is too close to the lake. He has no building envelope, but he has the right to rebuild. By allowing this, letting him come up, he's getting into the flood standards. Actually, when we look at the water plan and the comprehensive plan, we're actually protecting the shoreline and the lake. Being he's so close, I think this is actually a good thing to help with the flooding and all that. So it's actually gonna add more protection.
Thanks, Clint. Anything else? Go to the vote. The use will not put an excessive burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as parks and schools. Marv?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
I, George, is yes. The request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purpose already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant properties for uses predominant in the area. John?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Hi, George, is yes. Marv?
Yes.
Question 3, the use in the opinion of the Planning Commission is reasonably related to the existing land use and the environment, groundwater, surface water, and air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by the proposed use. Clint?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
I, George, is yes. Marv?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Question 4, the use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. Brent?
Yes.
I, George, is yes. Marv?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Question 5, the use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or water plan of the county. I, George, is yes. Marv?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
With all the questions being answered in affirmative, I'll take a motion to approve it and send it to the County Board of Commissioners.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make that motion.
Motion by Marv, second.
Seconded.
Second by John. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. John?
Aye.
Marv?
Aye.
Clint?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Aye, George is aye. Motion carried. So this will be to the county board meeting on March 24, 2026, in this room. And you don't, okay?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great day. Next item on the agenda, Darren and Sherry Holst. We meet again.
Okay, Darren Holst, property is 34524 Aztec Road, Lake Chamino.
Thank you, Darren. When you're ready, Amy.
Mr. Chair, this is also a conditional use permit request for alternative floodproofing methods. Again, the ordinance sections is 1004.34, 1006.22. Here's an aerial photograph of the parcel outlined in blue. The property is in Section 7 of Scandy Valley Township. It's on Chaminade Lake, which is a general development lake, and the property is a non-conforming single lot. The property is 120 feet wide and approximately 13,000 square feet. A variance was granted in January 2026 to construct a 34 by 40 dwelling with a 10 by 40 deck and a 24 by 38 attached garage, 4 feet from the road right-of-way and 1.4 feet from the north property line with a max height of 20 feet, and to install a tank and drain field septic system 5 feet from a structure, 5 feet from the south property line, and 5 feet from the road right-of-way. The dwelling meets setback requirements from the lake, but is within the mapped floodplain. Typically, elevation above the floodplain is achieved by elevating the construction on fill, and the Minnesota floodplain standards do require that 15 feet in all directions from the building. Due to the proximity of the dwelling to the road and the side property line, elevating on fill is not practical. Other methods of floodproofing are allowed by FEMA, but they do require a conditional use permit. This applicant is also proposing to install a backfilled stem wall to elevate the lowest floor above the regulatory floodplain elevation. And there are some sketches from an engineer that comply with Technical Bulletin 1. There's actually 2 drawings that were submitted, and so here's the first one, and there's the second one. And then again, this is that same technical bulletin using that backfilling on that stem wall rather than the pass-through vents. And then here are criteria questions, Mr. Chair. Oh, one more thing. I did have 2 comments. One from Todd Christensen. He called in support of this request. He thinks it will add value to the lake shore. And then there was one from Carl Lair. He said he is writing, I am writing to you concerning the conditional use permit to increase the height of a non-conforming structure to meet floodplain standards for Darren and Sherry Holst. At a previous meeting, you set the height at 20 feet. The basement floor needed to be raised 2 feet, addressing the floodplain issue. The existing height of the structure was reported to be 14 feet by Darren, and he said he was building a similar structure. That leaves an additional 4 feet to accomplish any differences in construction, such as floor trusses instead of joists and possible changes in roof pitch. I believe you set it at 20 feet because there are no other taller structures lakeside on Aztec Road with homes across the street. An increase in height of the new structure would change the look from the lake as well as impede the view from the lake from the houses across the street. I would like to request that the application be denied and the height to remain at 20 feet. And Mr. Chair, just as a point of clarification, I'd like to
yes.
ask the applicant, my understanding is that you took the elevation of the structure into consideration when you were proposing the 20 feet.
Correct.
And so so the 20 feet ground to peak includes this elevation.
Correct, it will not change. 20
Okay.
feet.
That's
mean,
what I thought, so I
yes.
just wanted to make sure I
Yep.
understood that correctly. Okay, thank you.
And I believe I asked that question at
Yeah.
the Board of Adjustment. I think
Correct.
I did, yep. Okay,
Okay,
yep.
thank you,
Yep,
Mr.
so I
Chair.
was clear on that, yep, okay. Okay, everything look good there, Darren?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Open it up to the board for questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Clint?
this be the last time we see you, Darren?
Well,
No,
maybe.
So anyways, with the stubble on yours, how deep are you going down underneath? Because I know you're raising this up, so there'll
Yep.
be so much up. But how far down are you going? You going with standard footing depth, or
Yeah,
what's
we
your
still have
plans
to
on that?
meet frost depth, you know what I
Okay.
mean, so.
Yep.
And basically that front wall is gonna be that's a walkout wall.
Yep.
So that's gonna go down,
Yep.
and then the other ones are in the banks,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Yeah. Just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
that, because it's hard to tell on this drawing, so that's, wanted to clarify that. That's
Yeah,
all I
this-
have, Mr.
This
Chair.
picture would be more like your side ones, cause they're
Yep.
ICF forms, and then the other one would be your front wall,
Yep,
yep.
okay. Thank you, that's all I have.
Any other questions? Open up the public hearing. Any public comment, speak to this conditional use permit? Any public comment? Go ahead, sir, state your name and address, please.
Carl Lair, 34519 Aztec Road. And so just to be clear, it's not, pretty much in here, it says you're raising it, but we're not going beyond the 20 feet?
That is correct.
That's correct. We're good,
Yep.
thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, it really should have, what we should have told you is that he needs a conditional use permit to have an alternative floodproofing method. It wasn't to increase the height. And so I understand
It
why.
was very misleading on how it was written here.
Yes, so I understand why you concluded that, so, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Third and final time, any public comment? Motion to seize public hearing?
So moved.
John?
Second.
Second, Marv. All in
Aye.
favor? Marv?
Aye.
Clint?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
I myself as aye. Any other questions? Any code of criteria questions? The use will not put an excessive burden on roadways, utilities, public facilities such as parks and schools. John?
At this moment in time, it will not. It's not moving, it's just going up, so there's no schools around, there's no parks around. Utilities are only for the home there, and that road will have no impact.
Thanks, John. Anybody else? Question 2, the request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvements of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. Clint?
No, it's gonna actually, betterment for the lake and the lake shore. It's not increasing any, real height in the structure, just getting them out of the floodplain. He has a variance to, rebuild the cabin, and there's a selected site, or a definite, height requirement on that. But for this here, we're looking at, the flood proofing and raising the floor elevation. I'd have to say yes on this question too.
Thank you, Clint. Anybody else? Question 3, the use in the opinion of the Planning Commission is reasonably related to the existing land use and the environment, groundwater, surface water, and air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by the proposed use. Brent?
Well, this is shoreland, and I think it's reasonably related to address the floodplain issues when you're that close to the water. And with the lot that he has not conforming, the only thing he can do is go up. He can't add ground around there to meet that slope pattern in all directions. So to meet the floodplain standard, this is going to provide for better groundwater and better surface water treatment. I don't know that air quality is really affected by this.
Thanks, Brent. Anybody else? Question 4, the use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. I'll take this one. Yes, the applicant has obtained a variance for the new structure, floodproofing the structure to FEMA standards. The proposed structure enhancement is it's all contained inside the structure for floodproofing purposes. So it is consistent with the zoning ordinance and purposes of the zoning ordinance. Anybody else? Question 5, the use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or water plan of the county. Marv?
Yes, it actually aligns with the comp plan, and they've actually have a storm water plan in play here. So I mean, it aligns with everything, so I have to say yes with it.
Thanks, Marv. Anything else, somebody? We'll go to the vote. The use will not put an excessive burden on roadways, utilities, and public facilities such as parks and schools. John?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
I, George, is yes. Marv?
Yes.
Question 2, the request will not be detrimental to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding vacant property for uses predominant in the area. Clint?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
I, George, is yes. Marv?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Question 3, the use in the opinion of the Planning Commission is reasonably related to the existing land use and the environment, groundwater, surface water, and air quality in the surrounding area will not be adversely affected by the proposed use. Brent?
Yes.
Hi, George, is yes. Marv?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Question 4, the use is consistent with the purposes of the zoning ordinance and the purposes of the zoning district in which the applicant intends to locate the proposed use. I, George, is yes. Marv?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Question 5, the use is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan or water plan of the county. Marv?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
I, George, is yes. Entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
Motion by Brent, second.
I'll second it. We recommend approval.
Clint, second to recommend approval. All in favor, say aye. John?
Aye.
Marv?
Aye.
Clint?
Aye.
Brent? Aye, George is aye. So Darren, it will be at the March 24, 2026 County Commissioners Board meeting in this room, so
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Well, thank you for your time. Thank you.
have a good evening.
Thank you.
So approval of the past meetings minutes. We have minutes here from March 3rd of 2026. If you all had a time to look them over, I did, and I thought they looked pretty good, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Marv, second
Clint?
by Clint. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
John, Marv,
Aye.
Clint,
Yep.
Brent.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, George is aye. Minutes are approved. Old business, Amy.
Mr. Chair, I do not have any old or new business.
New business?
I do not have any, Mr. Chair.
We're good. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion, John, second,
Clint?
Clint. All in favor, say aye. John?
Aye.
Marv?
Aye.
Clint?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Aye from George. Meeting is adjourned.